And good evening, everyone. My name is Ann Nutter-Kaufman. I'm a manager in our teacher quality department at the National Education Association, and we're very happy that you could join us tonight for this really important subject. We will go through all kinds of details about professional learning credits and those kinds of pieces toward the end, but I wanted to give you the opportunity to hear from our executive committee member, Hannah Vandering. Hannah?
Hey, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Hannah Vandering. I'm an elementary physical education teacher in Oregon, and I'm so happy to be here with you tonight. And we'd like to start, if you would please join me as we begin our meeting by acknowledging that we all, no matter where we are in this country, meet on the traditional land served by America's first people. We honor America's first people and all elders, past, present, and emerging. Here in Oregon, I reside on Kalapuyan land. The Kalapuyan people were 19 tribes and bands whose traditional homelands were the Willamette, Elk Creek, and Kalapuyan Creek watersheds of Western Oregon. The history of racism and violence inflicted on Oregon's Native peoples is often not shared, as I will tonight. As settlers began to flood into the Oregon country from points east, they brought with them racist attitudes about the indigenous people of the region. By the end of the 1840s, more than 9,000 American and foreign national settlers occupied the Oregon Territory. Some of the more violent members of this white population periodically engaged in acts of violence in attempts to displace and destroy local Native American communities. In 1849, one or more residents of Lynn City launched a nighttime arson attack on a Native American village, destroying their winter provisions for the entire year. Property crimes were not the extent of the damage inflicted upon the Native American populations. One contemporary settler, the naturalized English expatriate John Beeson, left Illinois for Oregon in March 1853, arriving in the Rogue River Valley at the end of September. He remained in Oregon for only 3 years before leaving, repelled by what he saw, returning to the East to write a book about the abuses suffered Native population at the hands of white settlers. I've shared a small glimpse of the harm caused to Oregon's Native peoples that has been suppressed. We ask that you commit to continue to learn and share what you learn about the tribal history, culture, and contributions that have been suppressed in telling the story of America. So if you have an opportunity in the chat to share information about your tribal, please do so in the chat. We can see all of that, but thank you for helping us honor our history. And I want to again thank you for joining us this evening. And we know this has been a difficult year, and we hope that these webinars are one way we can assist you in connecting with your amazing colleagues and have a little fun along the way. So tonight's topic is building routines for student success. And we have two amazing presenters who are going to help us tonight. And I'll introduce Veronica and Chloe later this evening. But tonight's session, we are going to talk about building the routines for student success in a virtual space. It's meant to be a way to better utilize routines for distance learning, and we hope potentially for in-person learning for those of you who aren't there yet. We know your situations are not the same, and some of you, your situation changes on a regular basis. And we know some educators are online, some are returning to online, some of you are trying to balance in-person and online. We wanted to provide you some additional resources that may be helpful no matter where you are in this journey. So this webinar is one way to support you in your professional work right now. It will look different for everyone, and no one has all of the right answers. We can make them up, but we don't have all the right answers here. We hope that you have an opportunity to try some of the suggested techniques, and we'll share further techniques that you can use on educatingthroughcrisis.org. Educatingthroughcrisis.org, again, is a website, and I'm imagining we can put that in the chat box for you. Just to be clear, our sharing these resources, we are not endorsing a particular product or platform. Instead, we're sharing information that our members have found useful in their journey, And so you have access to their thoughts. Our members are the experts, and they are going to share some of their learnings this evening. And finally, at the end of this, we really want your critical feedback about how things went, what went well, what can we do better, and how can we make sure that we're assisting you further. So one of the questions we'll ask you for feedback on additional items that you might like us to bring forward. The center, teacher quality, really wants to hear from you. So please make sure that you fill out that survey. And with all of that, enough of me. Let's get to the real stars of the show tonight. And that would be our members from the great state of Michigan. We have Veronica Chi and Anna Gonzalez. Did I get it right, Veronica?
Close. It's Veronica Chat, but very close.
Yeah, Chat. Oh, thank you so much. Well, welcome. And I'm going to turn it over to you for an exciting evening.
Alrighty. So like Hannah said, my name is Veronica Chet. I am a middle school math and science teacher. I also coach volleyball in the fall. And then I work for a, what do I work for? An after school enrichment program with a different district.
Hi, everyone. I am Anna Gonzalez. I work in middle school as well for, I do Project Lead the Way, which if you don't know what that is, it's like middle school engineering. So we do a lot of problem solving, computer science, robotics, all of that fun stuff that we didn't have as children. And you might notice that we are in the same space, but don't worry, we are to code. We very COVID conscious. We are roommates. We actually met on the second day of grad school at the University of Michigan, and we have been friends since then. This is our third year of of the past 5 years. We've lived 3 years together.
Yes.
So good times.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to go ahead and get started. This presentation aims to transform our physical classroom routines into effective use in virtual spaces. So how do we take what we know in physical spaces and use it effectively when you're virtual or maybe even hybrid? Taking a look at our agenda, your Q&A, we'll talk about the Q&A through the Zoom Q&A function, build some prior knowledge with some routines, discuss definitions, and then we'll get into the bulk of our presentation. First off, we have our fruit friends.
So our only fruit friend for today
Yeah.
is Piper. Piper, anytime that you see Piper floating around in the background, in the corner, anywhere on the screen, that means Veronica and I are modeling a teacher move. And Veronica likes to put it as, instead of putting on our teacher hat and student hat, it's just there so that you know that we're doing a very specific technique. Did I get that right?
Yes, perfect. All right. And so we're going to start by building some prior knowledge. So I'm going to drop a link in the chat, which is to a Mentimeter. So Mentimeter is a place where you can get some interactive slides to add to your not add to your presentations, but separate. And what it'll look like is when you click on that link, there'll be 3 text boxes there for you to answer the question that's on your screen. And it'll also be on there. It's something that you can use in your own classroom. If you go to menti.com and type in the code 9966675, it'll also work. And what it will do, it will populate a cloud, and this will live update as people add to it. So if you want to take a moment to enter in 3 words, that will answer this question: what do you or did you use in your physical classroom that teaches or reinforces routines? So we're seeing lots of schedules. I love anchor charts. The science teacher, that's so important.
Lots of visuals, it looks like.
Timers, a norm chart. Good. And another aspect of this word cloud is the most commonly submitted words will appear the largest and towards the center of the word map. And so this will continue to update as more and more people add to it. So we will take a look at how these items that you've submitted can be used virtually and how we can use it to help our students succeed.
Awesome.
All right, so some definitions.
Cool. So our first definition is class. When we say class, we often refer to live instruction. So we're on one side of the camera and our students are on the other side. And a lot of times people get that confused with our next definition.
Yep, which is course page. And this is your LMS, your learning management system, where you would upload materials that students can access, or maybe even where students submit their assignments. So we use these. We just wanted to make sure we were clear about the difference.
So now we are going to talk about virtual skill building. We are talking about this in 3 parts.
Yep. So we have the student's physical space, video conferencing skills, as well as submitting assignments. So we'll look at these 3 things independently. These are our learning targets, which we'll kind of use to root our learning in.
Cool. So this first activity is a see, think, wonder. Go ahead, look at this workspace. What do you see? What do you think? What do you wonder? And we will try to read as quickly as you all type. So take a second to look at the screen. What are you noticing about this? And go ahead and type in the chat. Someone sees clutter. And you guys are, I think it automatically has you typing to us panelists. So that works. I see chaos, mess, a lamp, disorganized.
The lamp is a Popeye lamp, something that people notice.
Yeah. Chaos. I like that. Less work is done. Someone said, I think less work is done. Stress. Someone sees a lot of stress, disorganized, multitasking, too many beverages by a computer. Basically trash is what I'm seeing. But they could be getting a lot of work done.
Depends on the person.
Depends on the person. So let's look at another workspace. What do you see here? And maybe you want to notice what's different based on the last one, what's the same, what is better, maybe what's worse. Go ahead and type in the chat. There's less materials on the table, newer laptop, no drinks in all caps. Organized, focused, note-taking, everything is very neat. No loose papers, only tools needed. The boy seems focused. Books, pencil, container. No distractions, awesome. So we put these 2 examples next to each other because we want you to start to thinking about what a workspace might look like. We have another example, and I want you to, you can type in the chat, but I'm going to tell you straight up, this is my work desk. You can see in the background, I have my bed. So my desk is at the very end of the bed, and I feel very vulnerable, like exposing myself like this. I don't have a ton of space there. And all of this to say that there's so much that we cannot control that our students have to go through. And I don't think many of my colleagues know that I work on a 15 by 30 inch medical seed table in my bed. So let's look at all the things that we as teachers kind of have to give up control of when we are working virtually with our students. First, we don't know what they're sitting on, right? For about 3 months, I was sitting on my bed doing work. And again, I feel really weird exposing myself like that. Yeah. But that's something that we can't help, that our students can't help, and we just kind of have to roll with. Another thing that we can't really control in our students' lives are where they're calling from. I had a student, he was calling in from the car on his way to Alabama from Michigan, and he said, I just didn't want to miss class. And I was like, oh, well, I'm glad you're here. Thank you for coming.
Another thing that we can't control are other people in the household, whether that's grown-ups in the house or siblings or anybody else. We can't control what background noise students are experiencing, or even if older siblings are helping younger siblings with online learning. Another thing we truly can't control is our pets and our students' pets. Pet Show and Tell has made a huge comeback. Well, Show and Tell in general has made a huge comeback in virtual learning, but pets sometimes offer distraction, but it can be a place where you can bring your students in and bond over and build community.
And last but not least, we cannot control devices or internet availability. Veronica and I have stories about this.
So many stories.
So many stories, but we will revisit one of those stories later on in this webinar. So just know that even battery, students often forget. I had a student with 10 minutes left of class. He said, I only have 5%. And then he was gone. So these are things that we can't control. But what we can do is encourage students to get the correct things to be ready for class. So here, whether it is their phone nearby or their computer, I always tell them it might be good to have your phone, if you have a phone, to have it close by so that if you get logged off, you can always call back in. Sometimes encouraging students to grab their paper, their pencil, their writing utensil, their notes, anything that might be helpful for you. This is what we can do for them. When I lead this in my class, I always start off every day with a list of stuff that you need for today. So today you need something to write on, something to write with, and all the notes that you have taken so far. Depending on what we're doing, especially with my 6th graders, it might be, hey, take out your Lincoln cubes, take out your wooden blocks. As long as your materials are listed clearly and you give them time to go get their materials. Cool. The second part of virtual skill building is video conferencing. So a lot of you guys mentioned signage and norms on the walls. This can be very, very clearly translated to a virtual space. So for example, when to turn on a camera, you can always in the corner of your screen have a little icon there that tells them now is a good time to turn on your camera.
Another thing you can prompt for students is when to turn on or turn off their microphone during class. So adding these visual cues really helps students of all ages to know when that is appropriate.
And in addition to having the mute unmute button, having sentence starters to help students to really get on track with their thinking, because a lot of times the hardest part is to just get started. Oh, sorry.
No, you're good. So, and then another thing is to give sentence starters when students are typing in the chat. So when you're directing students to type in the chat, as opposed to unmuting themselves and speaking up, a visual cue like this will really guide them to what they're supposed to be doing.
And in your copy of these slides, you can copy and paste these directly from this presentation into your slideshows because they are screenshots, and it's really convenient to have them all, I think.
It's like having a screenshot bank of icons you use. Absolutely. Another thing that I like to do in my classes is talking about chat norms. So I learned this from one of our colleagues, Munir, who tells his students it's either a red light, a yellow light, or a green light in the chat. So a red light would mean there's no activity happening in the chat. Yellow is I'm giving you a prompt and I want you to answer only the prompt. And then a green light would be it's a free for all. We're just going to chat together about whatever it may be. Another visual I like to use for my students is this chat waterfall. So sometimes I'll ask questions to the whole class and I want them all to have a chance to answer without other students who typically answer quickly to go over anyone else's voice. So by using the chat waterfall, I'll say, type in your answer, wait till I say, okay, to press enter. And then all of the messages go in the Zoom chat and it kind of looks like a waterfall. So
it's really fun. It's super fun.
Yeah, it helps students feel less nervous because they're not going to be the only one adding, and it gives room for more voices to be heard.
I love it. Another part of video conferencing is breakout room norms. So I have a really weird way of doing breakout room norms. I tend to give students a task and then we create norms from there. So here is just a screenshot that I have used. Once we did establish breakout room norms, we are still including that signage, the what do you notice, what do you wonder? And we also have the text box that's set with the sentence starters there. But in order to get us to the breakout room norms, I often start us off with a game. So I will put students into a breakout room and I'll say, would you rather be a detective or a pilot? Go. And I give them 1 minute where they have to talk and debate and vote. And usually when they come back, I ask them, how was it? And they say, it was awful. Why would you do this to us? No one was talking. No one was saying anything. This was weird. And I say, okay, cool. So let's introduce a couple norms. So I'll slowly introduce a few norms and then throw them back into breakout rooms. And we'll do this a few times until students really have a good understanding of what breakout rooms should look like. So on this next slide, when students are creating breakout rooms, I will put them into breakout rooms, and each breakout room will have their own slide to write their norms. This worked really well. I did this with high school teachers over the summer, and a good way to monitor students doing work in breakout rooms, and I didn't come up with this, I found this on the internet. Twitter is a wonderful place. If you are in Google Slides, on the side panel where you can see all of the slides, at the very bottom, there is a way that you can switch it to grid view so that you can see where all of your students are working and which groups aren't working where they should be. So I could see here that the high school with a black bar on top, only 2 of them were on the slide, but then I saw most of them were looking at the instruction slide. So that's just a quick tip for you. And that's how I set up breakout rooms.
Oh, there's your visual.
Oh, there it is. Cool.
Sorry.
Is this me? Okay.
Yeah.
Another thing that I love to do in my classes is give students choice for their breakout rooms. So this is from Mrs. Park.
Yep.
She is a teacher. She has a website, and this screenshot actually links to her website where she has a ton of resources for you. So this is, again, another wonderful internet find, but it allows students to choose a workroom that they want to be in, whether it is a social room, a quiet group room, so you're not alone, but no one's talking too much, or a quiet room by yourself working alone. I like to add some modifications, a purple partner room. So if we're doing group work and they have one partner that they want to work with, they'll put purple, and then I know usually who their partner is. Another one is if there's a group of 3 or 4 students who want to work together, I tell them to choose a random number, put yellow, and then their name, and then their number.
Yep. Renaming themselves.
Renaming themselves in Zoom.
Yes. All right. So to sum up video conferencing skills, just making sure that students have clear expectations and that you're matching them with visual cues so everybody has a better chance of being on the same page. All right. So now we're at our third part of virtual skill building, which is submitting assignments.
Cool. So how many of you have Google Drives that look kind of like this? This is a real screen capture of my Google Drive from a bunch of submissions from students in my computer science class. So they're all untitled, and it is really, really stressful to look for a specific student's project. So giving students that template of, hey, you need to have a very specific assignment title, that will really save you and them a lot of trouble.
Absolutely.
It is stressful.
Yes. And another thing to teach students something is about digital organization. So students sometimes or often struggle with organization period, but digital organization is a much different beast. So giving students some kind of template or a scheme for them to organize their files is really important. I like to encourage students to color code things so they can just one added layer of how to organize for themselves.
Another thing that's really important for students is allowing them to have multiple different ways that they can submit assignments. So this is from Schoology. This is a slide that I use regularly where students are given the opportunity to either type out their answers, they can record their voice or a video of them speaking. And they can upload pictures, notes, whatever it might be. You can also see they have other options in Schoology. I believe Google Classroom has a bunch of different options as well, but making sure that there are multiple means of expression that will help a lot of your students.
Yes. Another thing is teaching students how to take screenshots. Not only does this save time for students, but it also saves time for you. In your copy of the slides, each of these is a link to a YouTube video that walks through how to take a screenshot on any of these operating systems. And there's also this keyboard shortcut for the Chromebook. So many students use Chromebooks just because of
Cost, I think.
yeah, cost. They're the most cost efficient. So when students are working on third-party sites like quizzes or Edpuzzle, somewhere where you would have to go and check their students' work, it's easier to try and keep your feedback loop small, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, to give it so that students can send you screenshots of what they're doing, as opposed to you having to go to site A, B, and C all the time.
Oh, I'm sorry. So another way that students can submit assignments is by screen recording. So I do this a lot with my computer science kids. So they show me their program and then they show it to me working. And there are a ton of benefits. I get to see their faces, I get to hear their voices, and a lot of times we get to hear them think through what they're doing. And it's really cute because Veronica used to work at the school that my school fed into. So she worked at the high school. And a lot of times I'll be like, Veronica, do you want to see so-and-so sibling? So here on the slide in your copy of the presentation, there are 3 different links. There's Screencastify, Loom, and Screencast-O-Matic. These are great websites for students to record their screen.
Sorry.
I was going to say, for presentations, if students have to present a topic or anything, that's a really good way for them to practice and even turn it in if they can't be there on the same day.
I was going to say, because there's a question in the Q&A about how do we accommodate for younger learners who are not as independently writing. This is a really great way to make sure that their ideas are being shared to you. So instead of typing out or writing down what they're saying, they can speak with their voices, and then you can hear those things.
And there was a question about Screencastify. Screencastify is free if your videos are only under 5 minutes. Yes, Flipgrid is also a great way to submit as well. I think for younger grades, though, you have to have parent permission.
Yep.
But older grades, that definitely works.
All right. Another thing that's useful to teach students how to do is screen sharing. So typically when students are presenting in a physical space, they have their Chromebook connected to the projector and these things, but now we're going to have them share screens on Zoom. And talking about the norms around that, how to turn sound off and sound on if students are showing videos. These are things that you would want to explicitly teach your students.
And this last one, I believe, yes, the last one is Sirlinks-a-Lot. This is the actual name of the Chrome extension. So this is a Google Chrome extension that allows you, for whatever Google Docs, Google Slides, whatever that might be, this will give you an option to, you can automatically create a forced copy of a presentation. You can automatically have them create a template from it. So I used this the other day with some students that ran a little bit ahead. So I gave them another template and they just made a copy for themselves and ran with it.
So this is just doing the same thing as if you are in Google Classroom and you click make a copy for each student. If you just want to share a link, but you don't want students to edit the main document, then sharing a copy with them ensures that your master copy won't be edited in any way.
I use this every day. All right, sorry.
All right, so here is just our summary for this, and you can go through the ideas. Essentially, just make sure that students know how to organize everything and make it so that your life is easier, so you don't have to be chasing everybody's work from every corner of the internet. Okay, so our Q&A looks good. We're going to move into structure. So in this, we're talking about how do we set students up for success during their asynchronous time or just any time they're interacting with our materials.
Oh, I'm sorry. So we have 2 learning targets here. The first is I can create clear expectations for student work during asynchronous time, and I can teach my students standard naming conventions, which is important.
So we're gonna talk about our different expectations. So we're kind of organize this into 4 things: how to turn in work, how to read and utilize feedback, how to approach asynchronous tasks, and how to ask for help from educators and peers. So in your slides, this key will allow you to review any of the slides that we talked about with submitting assignments, which we just finished talking about. And this is something that I like to use for my students as well, just shooting them back to the slide that has all the information. The second thing is to teach students how to read and utilize feedback. So it's a skill that students don't inherently have, is to look at the feedback that we take so long to give to them and then what to do with it, right? So a student will see some kind of grade or some kind of mark on their assignment and they'll say, okay, it's over now. But instead of giving just the grade, if we give students an action item, so, hey, maybe you can add more detail at this question, or hey, maybe you need to finish the second half of this assignment, whatever the feedback may be. This is something that you can do to encourage your students to go beyond what they've submitted. Even asking them the question, is this your best work, gets them to reflect on what they had just submitted to you. Another thing, and I mentioned this before, is keeping your feedback loop small and localized. So in addition to using screenshots from third-party sites, making sure that any feedback that you share, you put it all in a place, like a feedback bank is how I think of it, and use that as a copy and paste kind of situation when you're giving feedback to your students. So you're saving yourself time, because we as educators also have to build these new routines. So one thing that has really helped me, and this is a screenshot from this morning, looking at, there's 2 things: grouping tabs, which is I think a newer feature from Google Chrome. I used to use a browser called Opera, and it allowed you to group all your tabs and then all of them would be put together. So instead of having, like, the tabs that are maybe like half a centimeter wide and you can't even tell what's on that tab, grouping them allows you to stay organized on your window. And another thing is bookmark organization, which I learned from a coworker earlier this year. I have all these different tabs that have hot links to things that I frequently go to. So if I'm thinking about me as a science teacher, I look down here and I can just go to NGSS and look at my standards as I want to. Or if I'm going to math, I can load in all of these hot links, and it makes it easy for me to find the resources that I visit the most.
This is a lifesaver.
Yeah.
I read she told me about it back in September, and then last week I started doing it and I was like, oh my gosh, my life has changed.
It saves so
It's
much time.
so incredible. I love it.
Definitely. All right. Oh, ProKeys is a good, I didn't hear about ProKeys before, so I'm going to check that out because I'm all about the shortcuts.
Oh, that's awesome.
Okay, so the third thing is how students approach asynchronous tasks. So this is a screenshot of a hyperlink schedule that I got from my colleague, Stefan Hogan, who he basically just took students' assignments, and on the assignments for that week, they were all hyperlinked with the due dates. So if you notice, these are from July. This was during summer school. And so this just gives students an outlook on the week so they know what to expect.
Cool. It's also important to build in time into your classes for students to look at stuff that they have to do or stuff that they have missed. So these are real screenshots from lessons that I've given, where we give them time to actually go through their course pages and write down anything that they're missing. So this, we say, use it as a checklist for stuff to do today and tomorrow. And that really helps students to not be surprised on grade day when they look at their grades and they're like, oh no, what happened?
Exactly. So. Especially when you're teaching virtually and you don't see your students every single day. that there's a lot of disconnect there. It was like, what's happening on that? Thanks, Ellen, for that in the chat.
Oh, perfect.
All righty. So another aspect of expectations we have of our students is how to ask for help. So just like all other people often, or students often have struggle asking for help. So we want to make sure that students have the resources and they have the skills so they're confident in asking for this help. So we have a course called advisory, which is kind of like a homeroom, and we teach explicit skills to students, particularly social emotional skills. And when students are asking for help, we want to teach them when you should ask for help, who you should ask help to, and if you're going to write an email, what's proper etiquette, just so that students have practice these skills going on into the rest of their lives. And these are slides that you can look to and refer to for your own students.
Yeah, I always think about how many emails I have that say help,
Or,
please help me.
or when the entire email is in the subject line.
Yep,
like,
and the whole thing is blank.
right. These are things that we want to avoid so our students have confidence, and like we as educators on the other end are going to use that as a teaching moment as opposed to a moment to like shut them down.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing I like to do with my students is have a living Q&A discussion page. So typically before assessments, I'll have a review discussion page where students can ask each other questions and they answer for each other, which takes a lot of stress and workload off of me and really gives students more autonomy and more leadership in their classroom spaces, just getting myself out of the equation. All right, so that's our summary for expectations, just making sure things are clear and making sure feedback is sustainable for you.
Alrighty, so naming conventions and organization. So we are going to present to you, we're just going to show you very quickly 3 different ways that you can organize your course page. The main thing that we want to focus on is that it's clear and consistent, and so that it is very, very straightforward. After these slides in your copy, there are going to be really specific breakdowns of how we came up with these naming conventions. And these are ones that we have either used in real life or are currently using throughout the district. So this first way is what the middle school and high school level use currently. We have what the thing is, we have the workflow, the subject, and then whether they're doing it independently or together. The second one was an elementary example where all of the things that they were doing on their own, all of the independent work was marked with that star. For the third option, this was something that Veronica actually used over the summer when she was teaching high school algebra, right? Yeah. Do you want to talk about that?
And so on that one, it was basically dividing things by day and making sure that students knew the difference between the lessons and the assignments. The summer school structure was way more simplified. So that we used in the past, and then we've moved on to the first naming convention that you see on your screen.
So just a quick summary, whatever you do, make it consistent, be clear about what they're supposed to do on their own. What are they supposed to do with us together? And then what is graded? Because a lot of students are very grade driven, and that's kind of what drives them, which is what grade driven means. It has been a long day.
All right, so we're nearing towards the end. These are what we like to call virtual protocols. So things that you would normally do in a class, in the physical classroom, and how that translates to the virtual space. And so here we are getting towards the end. Typically here we have 5 minutes left, so we're doing really well on time.
We are doing so well right now.
All right.
I'm proud of us.
So our learning targets here, we're going to actually go a little bit deeper than these ones that you see here, but creating routine protocols for tardy and absent students, creating protocols for students to follow if there are technology obstacles and mishaps, which thank goodness we did that at the beginning. And last but not least, creating clear norms for eating and bathroom breaks, or just breaks in general.
Yep. So we know what to do in a physical classroom when students come to class, when they come late, when they miss class, when they don't get something, and when they need a break. We all know this. The question here is, what do we do in a virtual classroom? And I'm sure you guys all have systems in place right now. We're just going to hopefully give you another way to look at it and add on some strategies that you can have. And especially with the technology issues, we have a lot of firsthand experience with that. So I teach a quarter-long class. And so right now we're in the third quarter, and I have just gone through my third round of reteaching the same expectations. And one thing that has really helped me out is by going over the expectations at the beginning every single day. And what's really interesting to me is that the first day of every quarter, this entire year, the very first day, I always lose internet, which is super fun. So I usually get to, if my call drops, stay logged on for 5 minutes, and then my internet cuts out, which is great timing. But the thing that I've learned most here is review expectations often and early, just to help you out. So I know when students enter my physical classroom, I give them all a high five. I say, hey guys, how's it going? Come on in. Obviously with COVID, we can't do that anymore. And obviously because we are virtual, it's going to look a little bit different. So reminding students to type a greeting in the chat, say hello, greet everyone. And I always say their name as I let them in. I usually have kids in the waiting room, and then I let them in, mark attendance, and then say, hello, Tommy, so that they feel heard and recognized, because a lot of times they won't hear their name in any day.
Yep. And another thing that I've been starting to do really recently is teaching students how to say goodbye at the end of a video conference call. Because sometimes that time when you are dismissing students for asynchronous work, or that's not something we want, that's not going to translate well in like life when we're physically in front of each other.
So this is one of those moments when technology has sent us a little notice. So we will, Veronica and Ann are frozen right now, but we're waiting to see if they get back on.
Hey guys.
Hello.
There you are, yay.
So it was so funny because my internet kicked me out, and I
That's okay.
that was so stressful. I am so sorry, guys.
Well, that was
But
very
we're back.
convenient, I must say.
Right? We were just talking about technology mishaps, and I think us being ahead of schedule right now, it really wants us to be.
They're like, let's see what would happen if they kicked me out. That's
all right.
So funny.
Okay, so we were just talking
wanna
about
switch again or no?
Sure.
Okay. How did we do that?
So you are on that. Don't tempt the internet. All right.
Oh goodness. What to do? Oh, it says my internet connection's unstable
No,
again.
I was gonna say you keep coming in and out.
Okay. All right, so we're gonna stick to this camera. Well, you might be able to see us on the other one, but we'll just stick with this one for the rest of the presentation. Perks of having us in the same space. So we were just talking about saying goodbye to students. So we're gonna move on to our next slide, which is when students are tardy to class. So when we have that routine set up for students to greet each other and you as the instructor to in class, then they will have that same routine built into them. So when they are running late, they say, hey, I'm here. So something happened, my internet cut out, or I was making waffles is when I get quite frequently, actually. And that cues us as educators to greet them verbally. And then a second part to this is to catch all the students up. So when a student joins the Zoom, sometimes that can be distracting, depending on the level, and thinking about where your students are all going to be at that point. So I like to use the phrase, at this point, we've done blank. And that catches up the student that joined in late, as well as bringing everyone's attention back to what was being talked about in that moment. So what to do when a student is absent? And this is a question that came up in the Q&A earlier, but in our district, we post all of our resources, our slides, our assignments, our notes, anything in our course page. And so students know how to access this and access things from previous week's work. And something to do when a student is absent is reach out to that student. Sometimes in virtual space, virtual learning, an absence could be related to, something happening in their space, something with their mental health. And these things we just want to make sure we can rule out. And then we want to create a to-do list for them for our class. So we want to make sure that our impact is matching our intention. Our intention is that students are going to get the content that they might have missed out on, but how that impacts our students is really important. So we want to make sure we don't overwhelm our students with what we need from them when they return. And for students, giving students action items as well for when they are absent helps them with that process of, hey, if I know I'm going to miss something, then I do this. And if I have to miss something on an emergency basis, then here's what I can do after.
Can you guys still hear us and see us?
Yes,
Or are we
we
frozen?
gotcha. You're perfect.
Yes. Okay, we're good.
Okay, cool. Because on my screen we're frozen.
I think
it's my computer.
Okay.
It's okay.
All right.
Yep, it kicked me again.
Okay.
This is fine. This is why there's two of us. This is fun. It's like a real life demonstration. So when a student is kicked off a call, let's talk about that. So anytime students are kicked off, we're just going to assume that they're trying to get back on. And three things can happen from here. The first is they come back on and they say, hello, we made it back. Awesome, good, glad you're here. The second is they don't come back, but they send you an email. And what you can do is the same thing as when a student is absent. Hey, here's the stuff that you missed. Watch the video if you need to, do the things that you need to do. The last thing, if a student doesn't come back and does not follow up with you, what you need to do as a teacher is to reach out to them. See how's it going. I had a student who she was in my advisory and as well as my second block, and she didn't make it to advisory, which a lot of times happens because students are still sleeping, but she didn't come to block 2. And so I sent her an email and I said, hey, what happened? I missed you. Are you okay? You usually don't miss class. And she ended up logging in and she was like, oh my gosh, I overslept. I'm so sorry. I was like, no worries. It happens. It really does happen. So as long as you're reaching out to them with this friendly face and this good intentions, right? This is what we're looking for, good intentions.
All right, so here's the coveted slide of what to do when you as the educator gets kicked off a call. So like you just saw, right? We didn't teach you this routine, but thanks for sticking along with us. What we like to teach our students is if your teacher is in the middle of teaching and they suddenly get kicked off the call, there is a specific amount of time that you should wait there for your instructor to get back. So whether that's 5 minutes or 10 minutes, whatever it is, letting students or making sure that students know that they're supposed to wait a certain amount of time before they leave the call. And then if it is the case that student or your internet doesn't come back, then that means that students are going to expect some kind of update from you as soon as you can get on. So a quick little story, in case today wasn't exciting enough. 2 weeks ago, I was getting observed and I lost my internet right in the middle of teaching while I was being observed, of course. And what happened was in Zoom, the first person in the call after the host automatically becomes a host if the original one is dropped out of the call. And so my kids knew, like, hey, this is what we do. We wait for Miss Che to come back. And when she comes back, it's a party and it's like, what happened? What exactly could have happened in that 5 minutes? And so it was nice for my students to show that to my principal that they knew exactly what to do in case this happens. So just knowing that unexpected things will happen takes the anxiety or weirdness out of the situation.
For sure. And if an educator can't log in the beginning, so this does happen a lot of times, like 5 minutes before class, my internet will just drop. Make sure that all lines of communication are open. And the protocol is the same as if the educator drops off in the middle of class, right? But just make sure that they are checking their email, the course page, and this all goes back to remind the kids every single day, early and often, what your expectations are, because things happen.
All righty. When students need help, it's really important that they have different ways to reach you, whether that's during office hours that you hold, whether it's during asynchronous time and you're just on a Zoom call in the class and students can come back to you. It's really important that students have access to you in that way. Additionally, when it comes to retakes, if you're in a standard-based learning type of situation or your school likes to measure mastery, then making sure that students have a way to take retakes or a way to make test corrections or whatever it is that you do, and keeping that feedback loop very small for you as well. So in the resources that we'll share at the end, there is a copy of a spreadsheet that shows you how you can organize retakes all in one spreadsheet. This is how I managed teaching last spring when we were on really short notice. What to do when students are eating or drinking. So, in this virtual space, we can't control what students are doing in their own space. They're entitled to do whatever they want. We can't do anything about it. And so I like to make sure that my students know that they have these freedoms, but they have to, one, think about what's the responsible choice for them. And two, they have to be mindful of others. So if students choose to eat or drink during class, that's fine, but I ask them to just be muted and have their camera off so it's not inhibiting anyone else from paying attention in class.
And when students need a break, we know that students, secondary students especially, are in charge of their own bodies. They know when they need water. They know when to go to the bathroom, but they are responsible for filling in the breaks. However, it's really important also to build in breaks into your synchronous teaching. I think Veronica's the same way sometimes, where when we're in the zone, we are in the zone and we do not leave the zone unless someone's like, hey, have you eaten today? So building in breaks for these students is really beneficial for them and for myself. I put in my agenda, drink water, so that kids drink water and I drink water. Younger learners definitely need more structures. So here's an example that I use in my class. I always show a 20 to a minute long, 20 second to a minute long video of something I find on TikTok that's work appropriate. I show it to them and then I say, take a break. You can do any of these things, drink water, use the restrooms, just look away from your computer for the next 5 minutes. 10 minutes is a long time, but 5 minutes is a good amount of time, I think.
All right, and that brings us to our closing. So I spoke about this resource briefly where things are linked in. This is and hopefully this link will work for you all. And I'll just put it directly in the chat. It is a link to a spreadsheet called the post-webinar checklist. And this is something that I like to use in Anna and my webinars so that, when you're sitting on the other side of a webinar, it's really common to be like, oh, I love this, or oh, I love that. And then the next day you're like, what's that thing that I really wanted to take from that webinar? And so I've created a space for you to kind of, compile all of your learning in a common space. So this is just how you can look at the learning targets. So the learning targets we've discussed are here. If you click on them, they'll take you to a slide directly to our slideshow, our main copy of it. And that's viewable to you, not editable. So you can reference your own copy for that if you want to make any adjustments or things. There's also a personal reflection tab that has just some pretty standard reflection questions on how you can think about using this information in your own learning. And then this additional resources page just has those two things I had mentioned, the Google retake form that I use with my students on a 4-point assessment literacy mastery scale. And then this like behemoth of a spreadsheet that I'm embarrassingly proud of. I really like spreadsheets.
It's really good. She does. It's awesome.
All right, so that concludes our presentation. We do have a, this is the information, these are all on your slides as well. And the exit ticket is here. If Ellen could drop that into the chat, that'd be helpful. And this exit ticket gives everyone who was a part of presenting this information, gives us a chance to look at what we can do to improve. Like, we like to read it to see how we are, you know, presenting our information, and Annie likes to look at it for, you know, analytics, I guess.
Yeah.
For analytics and what other kinds of
data.
things to offer. That's quite frankly where a lot
I
of
think the
topics
next slide is
come
past
from.
webinars that you can watch. One of ours is the social emotional learning in a virtual space. Highly recommend.
So I'm
Mhm.
going
I
to
do say
interrupt
so
you guys.
myself.
Can you hear
The
me?
one above it
They
too
can't
is
hear
leveling
me
up
at all.
Schoology. These
Oh,
two are
that's
both
awesome.
us. Yep.
They muted
We
themselves.
really love our social emotional learning one. So if you've got a time and you were entertained by us today, you might want to check that one out
We
yourselves.
have completely muted ourselves.
Yes, you can't hear me at all. Can you hear me? Hello? Hello?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
There you go.
Aha.
No, he just kept going and I was like, they can't hear me, can they?
Oh my goodness. I was
I'm
waiting
so
for someone to
sorry.
jump in, and then
Well, I was
like,
trying. Anyway, let me pass it
Oh,
to
no.
Hannah so that she can
All right.
conclude us out.
So sorry. So sorry.
Oh, this was so fantastic. I know that I speak for the over 100 members on this call. Veronica and Anna, thank you so much for your calm, reassuring use of some great resources. And it was great to see us lose you, so we got to practice those great things that happen on technology.
That was planned. No, it wasn't.
I want to point out and be thankful to both of you. The way that you talk about how we take care of our students and how important it is for our students to know we care and their learning is of utmost importance to us really showed through your heart as educators. So thank you for that. Thank you for all of the time and energy that you put into the PowerPoint presentation and for sharing it. And to all of you who joined us tonight, thank you for your membership. Thank you for being part of this amazing union that is going to ensure that our students have access to a great public school. And with that, I know that we are out of time. Please do the survey. And again, Veronica and Anna, everyone, thank you.
Thank you so much, Hannah. We really appreciate it. If someone could drop, there it is. Jen's on it. I was going to say, if someone could drop that exit ticket in there. I know that Jen and Ellen have been repeating this over and over in the chat, but I want to make sure I say it as well. You have to give us a few days for the recording of the webinar to be posted. When it is posted, there will also be directions on how to access a certificate. And it involves going into our learning management system and entering some information, and you can then obtain your certificate. And that address, Ellen is on top of it, is nea.org/webinars. When you go to there, you'll probably have to search for which webinar you're looking for, but you just click on there and then the sheet will come up. So. And I will be quiet. There were a couple of questions in the Q&A, but I think you guys got them. Yeah.
We got them all. I think so.
You got them all. I was like
frantically typing.
Okay, good.
All right.
So we will stick around for a couple of minutes if people have lingering questions. Otherwise, have a fantabulous evening and we will see you next time.
or morning.
I was going to say this too. On March 8th, this hasn't been publicized yet. We will have a panel of teachers talking about the different kinds of hybrid, concurrent, dual teaching, high flex, all the words, teaching that they're doing right now and what they're learning as best practices, because we're all figuring it out this year. So I think that'll be a really interesting conversation with educators from across the country. So that again will be March 8th at 7 o'clock. So hopefully we'll see you then. Thanks so much.
Thank you. One thing I want to say, parting words and hopefully a laugh. We are dressed up as our Bitmojis today.
Did anyone notice?
I did.
Noticed throughout your slides. It was very intentional.
Did anyone notice this? Because we spent 5 minutes discussing it.
Get to
I
dress
love
with
it.
Moji.
Yay! I'm glad people notice. It's like the Avengers post credits.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll let Anne, I know you have a meeting that you have to get to at the end of this.
Yeah, I do. I
So
just want to make sure that it looks like there's
I
some
forgot we did it too.
So, okay. Well, thank you all so
Yeah.
much, and we will see you next time. See you later.
Bye. Thank you.